Hi, I'm Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens. You don't have to be an artist to get something out of this channel, but you do have to be interested in fountain pens.
Henry, the pen.
What?
Don't you see? The pen is mightier than the sword.
Today, I'm going to be talking more about a nib than I am about a pen. When I was at the Baltimore pen show last month, I was able to purchase a titanium nib from the Caris pen company, actually from Bill Caris himself, who was there showing off their various pens. It's a wonderful small company out of Arizona. And I've always wanted to try a titanium nib, and they were willing to sell me just the nib because I actually had purchased over the last year a few sort of used Caris pens. I got a bunch actually in a lot with a whole other bunch of pens. And so I didn't so much want to get a new pen, but I wanted to try the nib, which fit. They use Bach nibs, and their nibs fit into the different pens. They have Bach number 5 nibs in some of their earlier pens, and now I think they tend to go with the number 6. So, and I had bought a Decograph pen, and I didn't really think the nib that was in it was that great. So it's a great fit. Most people who are into fountain pens are very familiar with two types of nib materials. There's the stainless steel, which is what comes on most entry-level to mid-price pens. Pens ranging from $10 to as much as $300. And here you can see that a steel nib on the Caris Vertex pen. It's one of the Vertex pens. These are really nice pens. They have a nice snap top to them, and they're beautiful plastic resins. You can see that originally Caris started out by making, and that's sort of their roots are in machine making, metalworking. And but then they've moved out to making beautiful acrylic resin pens in the Vertex line. Anyway, this is one of their steel nibs. It's I think a fine, and it has a beautiful engraving. It's made by Bach. And then there, of course, are gold nibs, which are more expensive. You can get a gold nib on a pen like the Pilot Elite. That would probably be your least expensive option, and that's under $100, and then you can spend thousands of dollars. This is my favorite pen. I'm always saying that this is the Pelikan M800 in terms of writing, certainly, and it has a beautiful gold nib. This pen I paid around $300 for it, but you can, usually it's $500-600 retail pen, maybe even more now at this point. And here is the Caris Decograph with the new titanium nib that I got from them at the Baltimore Pen Show. And you can see that it's kind of a grayer. It has a beautiful look to it that sort of goes with the Caris tradition of metal work. So it has this kind of gray steel look to it. And it's made by Bach, but they have customized it again with their engraving. Let's see if we can get that so you can see how that looks. There you go. Look how nice that looks. Versus the steel version. This would be, you can see how that looks, and it's shiny. Now, gold nibs are usually thought to be superior to steel nibs, and it's often what you find on vintage nibs made before World War II. The softer but durable material allows the nib to have a bounce to it, and if the nib is designed to flex, and that's a big if, because a lot of gold nibs aren't made to be flexy, it should be more nimble as you press down gently to make the line wider, and springing back quickly as you release it to make the line thinner. A gold nib is also potentially smoother. And so this pen would be the example of the advantages of the gold nibs. I mean, my gold nibs on, let's say, the pilot pens like the Custom A23 just write just so beautifully. But it's not guaranteed, and I have a lot of gold nib pens that don't write any better than the steel nibs. Actually, some of them write worse, and they're scratchy, or they write like a nail. So don't expect that just because you get a gold nib, you're getting something that is better. You're just getting something that usually is more expensive. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, today I'm going to review something different, a titanium nib, as I said. Not a lot of pen companies offer titanium nibs, so don't be confused. There are many pen companies, including Chinese companies like Asfine, that advertise pens made with titanium. In this case, they're talking about the finish of the pen or the trim. Most pens advertised as titanium have standard stainless nib. So really, if that's what you're interested in is the titanium nib itself, make sure that that's what they mean when they say it's a titanium pen. In contrast, Caris offers a true titanium nib as an upgrade. There are other pen companies that have titanium nibs that you can get, like the Good Blue Pen Company in England that has titanium nibs. I have never tried that, but they get good reviews. Now, Caris Pen Company was originally called Caris Custom, both spelled with a K, and it's based in Arizona. It was founded by Bill Caris and dates back to the early teens. Talking with him, I was surprised to find out that he originally had no great interest in pens. His background was in making machine parts. In 2008, he set up a small shop that specialized in metalwork and made custom parts and things like iPhone covers. He and a fellow worker, Dan Bishop, came up with the idea of making pens, and it was a way to utilize their expertise in industrial design and metalworking. But also, they were following this new trend of people being interested in collecting pens and using really fine writing instruments. A Kickstarter campaign got them started on their first pen design, which emphasized the industrial machine-like quality of the pen. And this, I believe is an early version of one of those pens that they came out. I don't think it goes back to the Kickstarter campaign, but you can see that in contrast to the Decograph pen, let's close this up. It's heavy and it has a kind of crudeness, but you can see how they emphasize the screws in the cap and the top. So they really were pushing the idea of it being industrial. And an early quality of the company, which I like, it doesn't post, this pen doesn't post, but is the fact that and they still do this, so you can get different kinds of sections for their pens. And also they design them so that they can be, you can change them from a ballpoint pen to a fountain pen and back and forth with the right hardware. So that's nice too. There's a real quality to this pen that it looks like something that maybe somebody came up with in their garage, right? And as they've been making more and more pens, moving to acrylic resin, their pens, I think, have gotten more slicker, more, less individual, a little bit more like a big company. Smoother, more elegant too, so I think those are all qualities of the Decograph. I think this is a very beautiful pen. It's interesting that it's not that different from the Lamy Aeon pen that's from 2017 that Jasper Morrison came up with. The design, the well-known designer, I spend a lot of time talking about this pen in an earlier video. It's really interesting how close the two designs are, and it's interesting that Bill Caris has said that with the Decograph, he was sort of looking at earlier pen designs in the 1920s and wanting something that was a bit more classic. earlier pen designs, I think, are really pushing the idea of a kind of modern look, but there's a bit clunky look to it, which I like. And this is also a very heavy pen. It's really pushing the idea that it's made out of metal. This is really all about the anodized aluminum. It's a much lighter pen. And as I say, it's kind of elegant. They are making many different pens in this line. The Decograph, sometimes they'll come out with a pen and make a very limited run of it. And that's true of their Vertex pens too. So you have to keep going back to their website. They have a lot of good sales on their website. So it's a really great company. In some ways, it reminds me too of Sean Design's company. And they both are often at pen shows, and you can talk to them about their pens, which of course I find very appealing. Now the Decograph uses a standard Schmidt converter, and it or cartridges. And when you buy it, it normally comes with a Bach nib that you can get in medium, broad, fine. The titanium upgrade is an extra $50. Why get a titanium nib at all? Well, titanium is supposed to be quite durable. Like gold, it's a little more bouncy and has an ability supposedly to be a bit more flexible. But don't be mistaken and think that titanium is flexible and then use the pen and push too hard on it and then ruin the nib, or also be disappointed because you're not going to get the kind of flex in a titanium nib unless it's particularly cut into a shape and engineered to be flexible. And in the case of the Caris nibs, they are not designed to be flexible nibs, although when I do the writing sample, you'll see that they do have a subtle amount of line variation. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about spending the extra money for this nib. So how does it write? Caris, Decograph. It is titanium, medium. And this is rhodia paper. And this is a favorite color of mine. This is the diamine oxblood. And you can see that it does flex a little bit. It's more like a semi-flex. It's very smooth. But it has a nice feedback. It kind of reminds me almost of a pencil. It's very pleasant. It's very wet. Okay. No skipping, writes really, really nicely. So just to give a bit of a comparison, this is a really nice pen. This is the Caris Vertex in Ultim with a broad nib. And this is, writes really nice. This is Waterman Inspired Blue, which is a favorite ink of people who use vintage pens. It's supposed to be really easy on the pen. It writes really well. It's been made for a very long time. So you see a lot in pen shows. Anyway, you can see this is very smooth nib, but it has no line variation at all. And it's it's smooth and lovely, but very standard. The titanium has a kind of lovely feedback to it, which you can see. So I don't want to push it too much because I don't want to ruin the nib. But you can see that there is definitely line variation and just a hint of feedback, which is nice because you know that then you're writing with it. While the standard Bach nib, I like the broad, it has feedback too. It's nice, but it's just not quite as tactile. So it's very subtle. So the question is, the question is whether it's worth it for $50. And I feel, look also how beautiful these nibs are in the way in which that they're engraved. I think they do a lovely job of that, if you can see that. I feel that for $50 extra, you're getting a whole other experience. I just like the way the titanium nib looks, that it's worth it. But, if you're not somebody who's obsessed with fountain pens, it might not be worth it. Also, just look, both of these pens are really beautiful pens. I don't know if you can still buy the Ultim version of the Vertex, but it is gorgeous. And, the Caris just makes really nice pens. So, I definitely would recommend it again, if you've got the extra $50. But if you don't, the regular Bach nibs are quite nice too. Thank you. And I will do a drawing of daffodils next. Don't forget to subscribe. It's the way to support the channel.